Peter, a very warm welcome to this NICC.
Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning. Great to be here. C'est un plaisir d'être ici à la conférence nationale sur l'assurance du Canada parmi les leaders de l'assurance multi-risque du Canada. Je suis né à Montréal. Je suis un vrai fils de cette ville et je suis fier d'être un Québécois par naissance. So it's wonderful to be here. I was born here. In this fine city, and I'm very proud to be, at least by birth, a Montrealer. Great to be here. You know, it's the morning, and you got to start with the regulator. So sorry about that. When I ever go to these industry events, I always kind of think, well, maybe they should just sort of start by playing the Darth Vader music from Star Wars. I always look forward to being here. This is my second year in a row. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. Not only is the NICC an exceptional forum to engage with industry peers, it also plays an important role in helping our office gain a deeper understanding of the challenges facing the insurance industry. And thank you, Joel. It was a bracing opener. Over the last 3 years, or a few years rather, OSFI has been very proactive in adapting to our evolving financial and risk landscape. We do that to ensure the resilience and stability of our financial institutions and therefore our financial system. To give you a sense, OSFI supervises roughly $11 trillion in assets across all the industries we oversee and supervise. Canada's economy is about $2.8 trillion. So we, at OSFI, we like to say the stakes are pretty high in terms of what we do for the country. So to be better at fulfilling our mandate, we have created policy documents like our annual risk outlook, which we publish annually and then update semi-annually. And we do that to flag risks on our radar, and it's meant to inform regulatory constituents and Canadians about what we're worried about and how we might react to that. Our approach to guidance has also evolved to reflect new forms of non-financial risks, such as what we call Guideline B15, which is our guideline on climate risk management, and our upcoming draft culture and behavior risk guideline. This spring, Parliament expanded OSFI's mandate to address emerging security and integrity risks, including those stemming from foreign interference. And of course, we are also continuing our regulatory work as it pertains to financial risks to make sure that federally regulated insurance companies remain solvent and have enough capital to fulfill their obligations to policyholders. So Kathleen, I'm done. Let's get to the Q&A.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Peter. And just so the rest of you know, Peter has agreed to take questions from the floor towards the end of our session. So please, if you have any questions, do be thinking of them.
Okay.
So thank you again, Peter, for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Very happy to have you. So why don't we start with first your new broadened mandate to supervise financial institutions with respect to policies for integrity and security, including foreign interference.
Yeah.
So this mandate actually extends beyond supervision. It's to examination of FIs and the policies they have in place, and then reporting to the board, and then also to the minister. Can you tell us a little bit more about this new mandate?
Yeah. So in the Budget Implementation Act, the government and Parliament changed OSFI's mandate. Traditionally, OSFI's mandate is to ensure that financial institutions are operating in sound financial condition. And when they start to veer away from that, we report to the board and begin a consultation or an engagement on how to right the ship. The new add to our mandate is the government has asked OSFI to ensure that the financial institutions we regulate have policies and procedures in place to protect themselves against threats to their security and integrity, including foreign interference. And so what does that mean? Integrity and security are big words, but as we looked at them and thought about how we were going to interpret the instructions from Parliament, we sort of realized that all the work we've done since the financial crisis in building non-financial guidelines or expectations, be that for accounting rules, be that for corporate governance, be that for culture, be that for third-party risk management, cyber risk management. Although we had called them non-financial risks, they fall neatly into either security or integrity. And so our first take was, this isn't really something that new. It just recategorizes and brings up to eye level work we've been doing for the last number of years. The ad, to be frank and transparent, is an emphasis or a focus on foreign interference. And our job is to engage with partners in the federal government and understand what they're seeing. And then when concerns or risks breach a certain threshold, we'll have to engage in a supervisory context if necessary. This as a challenge, we do not see it as a major threat today, and we aim to keep it that way, and we'll do that through awareness and vigilance. That's the highest level.
All right.
We can go into more if you.
Yes. So kind of getting into a little bit more of that. So there is going to be in short order a draft guideline on integrity and security. As there's going to be a 6-week consultation. I think the release date is now mid-October. Yeah,
mid-October we'll have our draft guideline for security and integrity out. It will array broad principles around security and integrity, and then it'll categorize pre-existing guidelines into either one of those buckets. And then the guideline will explain a process by which we will annually confirm that institutions have policies and procedures in place to protect themselves against threats to their integrity and security.
Okay. And the enforced date of that guidance will be?
So after the 6-week consultation, we will publish in January of 2024 the final guideline. And then we have a year to sort through how we will examine and report out to the minister. And so by December of 2024, I will write to the minister and report on our assessment or examination on the topic of security and integrity in Canada's financial system.
All right. So with that new guidance coming out, one comment I think that you've heard from industry, through your tenure is there's a lot going on. There's a lot of consultation. The pace is pretty quick. And you mentioned, other guidance, culture, cyber, and others. I know some are interrelated, but what does this do to the pace of consultation and the guidance that's forthcoming? Will there be a step back on some?
Well, part of the consultation will be for us to hear back from our regulated constituents about how serious, well, we know it's serious, but how intense the adaptation will be for the regulated space, for the institutions we regulate. And that'll help us calibrate how fast we want to pursue other regulatory initiatives. It'll also help us calibrate how to do integrity and security with an eye towards proportionality. And so it'll be really important over the fall, and we'd really appreciate vibrant, opinionated views on how to do this right and what to avoid so we don't do it wrong. And the guiding spirit of what we're trying to do is understand how we can do this in a balanced, proportionate way and adapt what our ambitions are in terms of regulatory guidance over the next year, when we know, this is another thing we're adding to the mix.
So just let's delve into that a little bit. You mentioned a vibrant interaction and hearing back from the industry. What, in your view, is a constructive working relationship with you and industry?
Well, The formal way is through these consultations we run, and I recognize they themselves are a burden. But I think if you look at the history of the way we've done consultations, we not only do we take them seriously, but our guidelines and our expectations adapt to what we're hearing. A good example is Guideline B15, where we slowed the expected roll-in of Guideline B15 compliance by, we're asking the larger firms with more capabilities to come in earlier. Firms that aren't quite so large get to come in a year late. So that sort of adaptation comes through consultation. That's the formal way, and then the informal way is through events like these, through our work with boards and senior managers on a bilateral basis to try and understand how we can get and calibrate the regulatory muscle and the application of that muscle in a way that is as constructive as possible.
So constructive meaning like a debate, a challenge, or
Well, debate and challenge would be great. And we try and conduct ourselves in a way where we can disagree in an agreeable way. The tension we face is we recognize that there are risks in our environment that we don't control. Climate risk, great example. Joel illustrated very serious rise in risks associated with climate. There are very serious rise in risks associated with the digitalization of financial services, with artificial intelligence. And so part of the tension is we have to go as quickly as the risks are coming at us. The other part of the tension is we're asking, roughly 600 institutions we regulate to go at pace, and some institutions have more capabilities to go at pace than others. And then we try and balance off those two noble and valid ideals against one another as best we can. And the process of consultation shapes our management of pursuing those sometimes discordant ideals.
so if I can put it another way, you're open to the challenge,
Oh, yeah.
questions,
Yeah.
the dialogue.
Yeah, maybe we should change it from consultation to challenge. But yeah, I mean, you don't get anywhere unless you debate and argue and disagree. And then out of that comes a better end product for both OSFI and the industry. So I can't promise you I'll agree, or that OSFI will agree with everything that our regulated constituents argue, but we'll always listen and engage.
Okay. And so for those, institutions you regulate are of very different sizes, with varying different capacities and exposures. Any thoughts on how you might kind of go down and implement a bespoke or proportional approach to the implementation of guidance, or how they might, talk to you about, how do we do this?
Yeah. So again, coming back to your earlier question, there's the formal consultation process where firms of all sizes can give their points of view, speak to us about how they're seeing what we're asking them to do and how burdensome it is. And then there's the informal bilateral way where we can do it. And then there are industry forums like this where you can challenge me and say, well, we'd like to go slower on this or faster on that. And out of that process, hopefully, comes a relatively balanced approach that serves those two ideals I talked about: the ideal of being of reacting to the risk environment, which we don't control in a responsible way, and the ideal of doing that in a way that is balanced and proportionate within an industry. And I'm not telling you that it's easy to hit both those ideals simultaneously, but we always strive for that.
So let's switch gears a little bit, but still on the basis or on the theme of discussion. What about risks arising out of provincially regulated institutions or entities? I know they're not within your purview, but there's still something to be managed there.
Yeah, and so the way we work through that, we work through a variety of federal provincial forums to work with our colleagues in provincial regulatory spaces to make sure that we're calibrating and not stepping on one another's toes. And we're acting in a way that for a regulated constituent who might have to face off against OSFI and a provincial regulator, they don't feel like they're working, or we're working at cross purposes. And I recognize probably we haven't attained perfection, but I've tried to, and my provincial colleagues have also tried to establish constructive working relationships where we consult with each other on a fairly regular basis. You know, when I travel around the country, I always try and drop in on my peers who may work at similar institutions for their provincial governments. And the relationships are constructive, and I usually get really good ideas from those peers.
That's great. Now, earlier this month, you gave a speech at the 24th Annual Scotiabank Financial Summit. And at that summit, you spoke about insurance resolution. And in particular, I quote, the opportunity to bolster the insurance resolution regime in Canada is well within our grasp today. Would you elaborate for us, please, on what industry might or can expect to be seeing with respect to this?
So where do those comments come from? I used to work for the Resolution Authority for Canada's deposit-taking system, CDIC, Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. And that was a Crown Corporation and an authority put in place to deal with potential disasters in one part of our economy, and that disaster would be a bank run at one institution, one deposit-taking institution that metastasizes and touches other institutions. And so you put in place this industry-funded resolution authority to deal with managing the costs of that catastrophe. And it leverages the financial power of the sovereign and the implicit obligation of the sovereign to ensure that the financial system operates through good times and hard times, and at the same time is done in a manner where taxpayers don't feel like they're subsidizing risk-taking on the part of the government. And I mean, I worked there for 3 years, and I have an affinity for that model. I'm not suggesting for a moment that that's the model for the insurance industry, be it the P&C insurance industry or the life insurance industry. But the concept of an authority, a resolution authority in place, and a resolution mechanism in place, such that if we have a failure of an institution that threatens to undermine broader financial stability, we have a pre-built, maybe not battle-tested, but scenario-tested resolution mechanism that stabilizes the industry in a period of high uncertainty. And I think that's achievable. I think the work my friend Alistair is doing at PASIC is a great example. I think some of the work that the IBC is doing and has come and spoke to me about is fantastic. And I'm looking forward to pushing the envelope on getting a better resolution mechanism and discipline in place. So, God forbid, if we do have a large catastrophe in Canada or a failure of an institution that threatens to spread to other institutions, we have a mechanism in place. We have flood levies in place to withstand what may hit us. And I think, both PASIC and the IBC have talked a lot about earthquake risk. And, at some point, might be in my lifetime, might be in my grandchildren's lifetime, there'll be earthquake in Canada. It might be in the Ottawa-Charlevoix region. It might be out west off the Pacific coast. But it's going to happen. All geology and science tells us it's going to happen. When it happens, it would be good to have in place a mechanism that could stabilize the insurance industry after a huge event like an earthquake financially, so that recovery can begin and so that other critical insurance services are available to Canadians the day after that awful event.
Okay. But let's just look at the bank. We haven't had a Canadian bank failure in recent.
Since
memory.
well, we haven't had a deposit-taking institution failure since 1996.
Right. But, I guess your view is we still need a mechanism like this for the P&C industry? Like, what else? Can you elaborate a little bit more on the drivers for this?
Yeah. When I don't want to set as a fixed notion that there's some CDIC type model for the insurance industry. That is not what I mean to communicate or suggest. What I'm suggesting is if there is either a loss contagion event triggered by the failure of an insurance company, or there is a sizable event, be it earthquake or climate, that produces extraordinary loss, that there should be some pre-planned mechanism in place to deal with that. That pre-planned mechanism should involve the industry and should be constructed in a way that although the sovereign may provide support during a finite period of financial strain, that the taxpayer in the long run doesn't subsidize that loss. So let me give you an example. In the case of CDIC, if you have a deposit run followed by a number of bank failures, CDIC will come, fulfill their deposit insurance obligations, and absorb losses in the process of doing that. Over time, and that will diminish the CIBC Deposit Insurance Fund. Over time, CDIC will charge back at a higher rate deposit insurance premiums to the industry after the event has come and gone and their stability is returned, and the industry will then replenish the deposit insurance fund. In that manner, the sovereign is there to support a critical industry through a period of severe financial loss, and over time the industry recapitalizes that fund and the taxpayer isn't, in the long run, subsidizing economic loss. And that is a way you get confidence and integrity into a financial system. Now, if we had a large earthquake that produced a $50 billion loss, what I'm hearing from the industry is that the industry would be in need of financial support for a finite period of time. And then the mechanism we need, A, should be able to provide that support as needed and on time, and B, ensure that the taxpayers aren't permanently subsidizing that activity.
Okay. And I mean, that seems to resonate really well with the blueprint, right, which talks about confidence in the Canadian financial system.
And confidence isn't just the sovereign's there with support when you need it. Confidence is it's done in a way that taxpayers see as just and appropriate allocation of the costs of risk-taking. And in other countries, we've seen what happens to confidence in a financial system when that ideal isn't pursued credibly. And it's not positive for the industry, and it's not positive for governments.
All right. So, there's a lot of risk. We've had a conversation about what all of those are and the scary things that are out there, if you will. What excites you about the next 5 years? What are some opportunities?
Joel's presentation. The fun part of this job is, and we have the advantage of, and I know we have a long way to go on technology and data and all that, but we have the advantage of foresight we've never had before. So we see climate risk. We see the opportunities and threats of artificial intelligence, of digitalization of financial services. The fun part is building up discipline and structure to absorb and manage those risks. And if after my time in this office is done, we've kind of moved the ball forward on that. We've helped our organization, OSFI, and the institutions we regulate manage those threats and opportunities a little bit more effectively. Well, that'd be just incredibly personally fulfilling. That's what gets me up. Those are the risks that keep me up at night, and they're also the opportunities that get me out of bed in the morning.
We're going to open it up to some questions from the floor. Is there a mic around? If you do have a question, you know, maybe raise your hand and somebody will come around with the mic. As we're waiting for that,
Yeah.
One of the things, though, to explore opportunities is capacity.
Yeah.
So there's so much going on. I mean, it goes back to earlier, the pace of consultation, but capacity at OSFI, capacity at the institutions you regulate. Can you speak at all to that?
Yeah. It comes back to that tension. I don't want to, and no one at OSFI wants to overtax to a detrimental degree the institutions we supervise and regulate. Parliament tells us that our responsibility is to enable the institutions we oversee to compete and to take reasonable risks. And if we strain capacity to do that, I don't think we're coming into full compliance with our own guidelines assigned to us by Parliament. The other thing they assign us is see the risks in the windshield, not the rearview mirror, and react to them early. And we don't control that. I don't control the warming of the planet. Don't control what the physical and transition risks are associated with that. If we do nothing, some institutions will be foresightful and prepare themselves. Others may not. And in a financial system, that is a system that is interconnected. And so you know, as an individual financial institution, you can do everything right. And, you know, 3 degrees removed, one institution misses something, that can resonate and ripple through a financial system and harm your institution even though you've done everything right. And so when we think about capacity, we think about both those ideals. We don't want to overtax the industry at any one time, and we will, through our consultations, be empathetic and adaptable to what we're hearing. At the same time, I don't really slow down what's happening in the climate. I don't really slow down what's happening in terms of artificial intelligence and the digitalization of financial services. But my responsibility is to ensure that the industry has a basic level of smart adaptation to those opportunities and risks.
Okay. Any questions?
Routledge, Craig Stewart with IBC. First, I wanted to thank you for your comments, both at the Scotiabank Forum and here on a resolution mechanism, particularly around earthquake. I think I can speak for many in our sector that thank you for your leadership, for paying attention to this issue, which is of critical importance. My question, though, is about actually around flooding. OSFI has a project underway right now, and I think we're looking forward to getting the results soon, on the effect of flooding on the mortgage lending industry. Could you just speak maybe to where you see that going, what you're hoping that that study will inform, and what, I know it's too early to think of decisions coming out of it, but what are you trying to get at with that study?
So I want to start, thank you for the question, Craig. I want to start by clarifying it's a Bank of Canada OSFI project, and so we really count on our colleagues and peers at the bank for their expertise in work and modeling, and then we bring the financial sector and individual institution level or piece to that. And we've had great participation amongst some of our colleagues in industry. So it's a study meant to look at where flood risk is intensifying in our country, where the risks to property principally may lie, how adequate is the insurance coverage, how prevalent is the insurance coverage, and then what does that mean for financial stability in the event that we have or we suffer an extended period of more intense and more regular flooding. And what the study will aim to show is here's where there are coverage gaps, and here's why. And then where there are coverage gaps, here's the property that is exposed, and then assuming there is more flooding and more costs associated to property associated with that flooding, to the extent the two questions we ask is, can the industry absorb those costs? Have they priced that risk accurately? And where there isn't coverage, does the banking sector, which will have loans that are collateralized by that property, can the banking sector absorb the losses associated with uninsured losses? So stay tuned. I don't want to sort of give away the ending, but I think on this particular risk, the industry in both the banking sector and the insurance sector have been ahead of the game and have been really tuned into this risk. But stay tuned.
Thank you.
Hi, Peter. Ben Hunter with QBE Canada. My question is around, you were talking about the cultural oversight. Just interested to know a little bit, around some of your thoughts around that. Is that principle-based kind of expectations around the cultural piece for insurance companies?
So in our draft culture and governance guideline, it is entirely principles-based. I would call it an articulation of a set of principles that we hope boards of directors aspire to, and then move their organization. And the thing with a principle, right, you never get it 100%. You're always trying to move a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And so what will be first implicit in that guideline will be a self-assessment tool based around those principles where boards can assess, okay, where do we stand on this? And then the regulatory dialogue won't be, well, here's this line and you got to get over it or else. That's not the way this works. Particularly for culture risk, particularly for non-financial risks. I think the principles-based approach is really well suited to that, and the dialogue is, here's the principle. We know no organization is going to be perfect on it. The dialogue is, is there a serious deficiency? Most cases, to be honest, there isn't. But you're not perfect, so the dialogue is, what are you doing as a board to be more perfect?
So that'd be a proactive kind of approach to looking at this.
Yeah, based on dialogue, engagement between supervisors and the boards and senior managers. And the notion is, no institution is going to hit 100, 100, 100 across principles generally and on culture principles specifically. What we want is make sure there aren't any material deficiencies, and assuming there aren't, in most cases, again, there really aren't. What are boards doing to move towards that principle, every month, every quarter, every year? And these are the principles, right, that sustain long-term franchise value for an institution. And that's where our interests really are, where the regulated and the regulator interests are aligned. The regulated institutions seek and want to sustain franchise value for their long term, not only for their shareholders, for their employees, for their customers, for their suppliers. Regulators want a stable financial system where the institutions operating within that system are competing, but competing on the basis of sound franchise strength. And in that sense, Culture Guideline is constructed in a way to support and enhance an institution's pursuit of franchise value, sustainable long-term franchise value that generates value for all stakeholders.
That's great. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Sridhar. I'm from AM Best. Quick question about IFRS 17 implementation. Looks like the OSFI has done a good job in terms of implementing IFRS 17 guidance, consultation, etc. Just curious if you have any best practices or advice to share with other jurisdictions as they are implementing in the near future.
Best practices and lesson learned. Appreciate the compliment. I'd say our regulated constituents who who brought in IFRS 17 did the real heavy lifting, and we'll take 10% of the credit, and 90% go to our regulated constituents. Or maybe we take 1% of the credit and 99% go to the regulated constituents. So what are the lessons learned? I would say the following. Doing it over a long period of time when you're changing something this fundamental to how you're measuring risk and reporting on it, it was protracted and it took a long time, and I'm glad we didn't do it in a shorter period and so I would say take the time you need. At the end, we did kind of have to set a deadline and stick to it, and it did create challenges for our regulated constituents, and I don't minimize them, but I think fair to say it took us quite a number of years, and I'm glad we took the time to do it. The other thing I would say is that I want to make 2 points. The first is IFRS 17. If you think of, like, you're looking at a village square and you stand up on the top of one building, you see the village square from one perspective. And you come down and you go over to another building and you look at it from a different vantage point. Your perspective and your appreciation of what's going on in the village square changes by where you sit and the vantage point you look at it from. IFRS 17 changed the way we look at risk in that way, and the learning I had was when you change your perspective on risk, sometimes your measurement and your evaluation of risk changes. And I think the notion that we were just changing the yardsticks, but fundamentally the risks didn't change, wasn't incorrect, but it was flawed. A better metaphor is that IFRS 17 changed our vantage point in looking into risk, and we had to recognize that in how we thought about capital and liquidity and business risk. The other point I'd make is we're 2 quarters in, and it's my sort of commitment to the industry. After we get a number of quarters built and we understand how IFRS is working in real time, in real life, we do want to hear the industry about what we can do better in terms of incorporating what we're learning from IFRS 17 into our regulations. And not to say there's a new consultation coming and you have to get geared up for it, but we're open for business in terms of re-examining the first year or 2 of IFRS 17 as it flows through our capital and liquidity standards in particular.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Last chance. Oh, Joel?
Thank you. Peter, could you just elaborate a bit more on B15 and what your expectations are, what OSFI's expectations are with respect to B15 and the scope of B15?
Yeah. So B15, Climate Risk Management Guideline, it came into force this year, but there is an elongated implementation. There are 2 primary focuses. The first focus is governance, and the second focus is what I would call measurement. On governance, we want to see boards begin to put in place regular disciplines for thinking about climate risk, for evaluating it, and for adapting their business models to the realities of what that risk implies for their industries and for their business models. And we want to see discipline at the board level around that. And our view is that when you get discipline at the board level, you'll get discipline in the day-to-day management level. That is principles-based. It is not quantitative. Then there's the measurement piece of it, which is quantitative. And the first thing I would say is we've, for larger internationally active insurers, we've asked for them to come into compliance with measurement expectations in 2025, and then those firms that aren't internationally active and large, they have an additional year. And what we're trying to do now is work with the industry to understand, in accord with the Canadian Sustainability Standards Board, what sort of measurements need to be in place in order to ultimately support whatever the CSSB puts in place. This is going to be, it's going to take longer than we'd like because it's really hard to do. But we will be one of the entities, at least, pushing the envelope on getting measurement right. And I'm using the word measurement and not the word disclosure on purpose. Securities regulators, shareholders, they're going to have a voice in disclosure in addition to OSFI. Our priority over disclosure is accurate measurement. And all the work we're doing in our climate risk forum is around improving the discipline and accuracy of measurement in line with the constraints imposed by the fact that it's somewhat hard to measure this, and we're just starting. And we're going to get that right, and the disclosure piece is important, but measurement is what you do first, and you do it right first.
All right. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Peter, for your time, for being here today. You heard it here. Peter wants to hear from each of you. We'll try to find Peter's cell phone and flash it up on the screen a little bit later so you can talk to him. But yeah, we appreciate that, and the comment that you do want to hear from the industries you regulate. Okay. That's great. And also, I think I heard, so 100% is not expected, right? Kidding. You don't have to answer that.
No. Perfect realization of principles is probably something that won't be achieved in my time. 100% pursuit every day of perfection is an expectation OSFI has.
Well said. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Kathleen. Well done. Appreciate it.